Good day. My name is Austin. The recording date of this video is February 19th, 2025, and I am currently 28 years old as of making this video. I wanted to sort of do this as sort of like a sporadic series. I wanted to talk about my experience with seeing, being around, and unfortunately ultimately being sucked in to an alt-right pipeline. I was there for it all. I was there for the first meme wars, Gamergate, everything. I saw everything. So from my perspective, I just like to share my story. I obviously don't hold these beliefs anymore. I left that whole thought group probably around 21 years old. And I've been more or less leftist, liberal ever since then. There was a status quo in the West, especially along the lines of gender. And for a long time when I was a kid, nobody really questioned it. I'm not so much saying like the prevalence of like non-binary gender identity at that time. I'm more specifically just talking about the classic binary gender roles or, but something came out in 2012, but I don't think it really came out till like 2014. That's 2013, 2014. That's when I really myself started seeing a lot of information about this. A woman named Anita Sarkeesian made, under the name of Feminist Frequency, made a series of, honestly, looking back now, pretty thought-provoking videos on the presentation of women in video games. Looking rather scantily clad, them actually having like appropriate battle armor, but for some reason the male characters always do. Stuff like that. And, obviously you can go too far with that. I mean, I'm sure there are games just basically made just to be like that. But then, the problem was you would have like all these games trying to claim some sense of realism, and the woman protagonist was never natural looking or was just always in, very revealing clothing. And at this point in time, I personally was like 16 to 17 years old when this happened. And what transpired next was a massive fucking social rift that honestly I think began in many internet as well as gaming communities. Basically it was like you were either on Anita Sarkeesian's side or you were against it. Now, a lot of what I remember was a lot of sentiments from the anti-Sarkeesian camp, basically saying we're just being like attacked for no reason. It's not like we're even the ones making these video games, and you'll see that talking point reiterate itself time and time again. I remember a few key figures. There was this British guy that they kept calling an SJW, but I think for the most part, the guy was actually pretty on point. But I think, I don't want to say it kickstarted a lot of careers, but it opened up opportunities for some faces that you would probably associate with right-wing talking points nowadays. Because you didn't really hear about like Sargon of Akkad before this. Styx Hexenhammer 666 was still a very, very underground channel. Milo didn't pop up till 2016, maybe 2015, mid 2015, the earliest. I mean, you just didn't really hear a lot of these people. But then when there became this perceived necessity for a product to exist, which basically tells a certain percentage of the population that they really do benefit socially in a lot of ways, that they're actually the victims and they're not to blame and everything's a big misunderstanding and blah 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 blah. Social Marxism, it's all social Marxism. They're all virtue signaling and doing stuff of this nature. That's when these people came into the fold, or really started getting the exposure. Because this is when it was all fresh and new. You know, we had Trump pretty much raising the stakes and going on his first presidential run. And, you know, unfortunately, after time, I just got sucked into the populism, rather. Before that, many will probably remember me on this channel is pretty much just like a baseline libertarian content creator. Again, this was before I had like this monumental shift in my values and what I think the world should be like. But a lot of us, as I said in my last video, the people that voted for Jill Stein, you know, a lot of us libertarians in that first race decided to make a really bad decision. As you can see, like Gary Johnson towards the end of the 2016 election was making an utter fucking buffoon of himself. One of my favorite clips is when that idiot was on a interview, didn't know what fucking Aleppo was, but was running for the country, or when an interviewer basically shredded apart his tax policy within like 3 minutes, and all Gary Johnson could do is snap and yell at the guy. I mean, that party will be illegitimate for many, many decades and probably fucking die out. And that's honestly okay. They want to fucking privatize everything anyway. Fucking losers. As far as that's when I would say the alt-right pipeline began. Because not only after Gamergate did you have that, you had a lot of discourse about gender relations in general, usually from MRAs that were very quick to point out the fact that, you know, women can beat men and men would never be believed if they got raped, and, you know, all of these things that perhaps aren't even true at all. But they just go with the flow, and they just say these things without even, you know, saying anything. Hi. But anyways, I could tell you from experience that the alt-right pipeline, generally grabs up insecure young men. And I'll tell you my story. Around the time of the first Trump election, I felt like a fucking loser. Right? I was this 19-year-old kid in my mom and dad's basement. Well, I guess the bedroom. We didn't have a basement. It was like a floor level. But the green room was my childhood bedroom. And, you know, you're young and you want to make a change in the world, and, you know, this guy comes and says, well, the current establishment is causing all this mayhem and we could cause a huge paradigm shift. And, you know, you're worked up and it's all about the memes and getting over on you know, the DNC, the libs, the lefties. So, I bought this shit hook, line, and sinker. You know, I was very, very firm in my socially And, well, maybe not exactly socially. I never really gave a shit about LGBTQ issues. Like, those people were cool with me always. I remember it causing, like, a lot of fights, like, some of the racism, and like, looking back, like, well, it was everywhere. I mean, what'd you fucking expect? But at the time, you're like, no, we can landscape this differently. No, you can't. You can't fucking landscape it differently. You have to defeat them. So what had happened was here is the thing, right? There are a lot of us that were more like lukewarm conservatives, but more hardline libertarian at best. And it started to become increasingly eerie. The number of people that were openly racist, openly anti-Semitic, openly for like acts of fucking genocide on people, in the same rooms, having the same discourse with the people that were like just wanting like smaller government, I guess. And remember, the phrase "useful idiots" is pretty much a good turn of phrase here. We were the useful idiots. You know? They say, oh, but you have conservative values, so we're basically on the same side. Until they get more control and you're not as racist as them, or you're not as white as them, or, you know, you're not the right ethno-geographic diaspora. You know, and I feel like I could see that in real time. So I would provoke these people publicly as a half-white, half-Arab Jewish person. I say, I'm Jewish. Why do you hate me? You don't even know me. The weirdest part was seeing people say, well, I don't hate you personally, but from an ethnic standpoint, I do. How can you hate someone from an ethnic standpoint? Another thing in one of these chats, I was trying to talk someone out of how genocides aren't good ideas. And I said, well, it's better to treat people with civility. And verbatim, I'll never forget it, this man told me, civility is a sign of weakness. Go on these Occupy Democrats logic and the Federalist Papers and Turning Points USA and all this other fucking alt-right, closeted racist, right-wing gobbledygook fucking garbage. Look at some of these comments on some of these posts. I have seen people claim to be patriotic about this country, yet advocate for having legislation that would make it a crime to be unpatriotic. I have seen people talk about we need to disarm the lefties because they're terrorists. And I'll say this right now. Pay attention. Pay attention. In the 1930s in central Germany, a certain party used to hold rallies in very, very leftist areas and started instigating fights so they could proclaim that the liberals and the leftists were aggressors and attacking them. The world is watching you, Proud Boys! The world's watching. At least we know now what to look out for. I left the alt-right pipeline in 2021. No, when I was 21. My fucking bad. Or 20, actually. It was 2017, and Trump had just passed the Muslim ban, basically, Muslim travel ban. And as someone with certain heritage, really made me start looking at the world a little differently. And who was in office. And just how prevalent certain horrible, horrible ideologies were still present in the world. So I spent some time away, 4 or 5 years, just studying. Listening to other talking points, actually listening to debates with an open mind. I remember some of the first debates were like, raising the minimum wage and stuff of that nature. The thing that these people won't tell you is that they have no original thoughts on alt-right. They're all saying different iterations of the same rhetoric. You have a better... How do I put this? It's like listening to 4 people tell their spin of the same Breitbart article. And they want to say that they want a culture war, but all they did was sell out the country. And now we have an egomaniac in the fucking office. And the memes they'll be fun. They'll be fun. The memes will be fun, right? Tell your grandma gets your funding for Medicare slashed and you have no reason why your landlord's terminating your lease and you have 3 days to fucking get out and you accidentally mess up and get someone pregnant and nothing can be done about it anymore. And you have cancer, but fuck you. It was a simple choice. We tried to tell you for months and months and months what was best for you, and yet you still fell for it. Bless your doomed hearts. Truly.